Welcome. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Cuts International, also on behalf of our partner in Bangladesh, Unofficial, let me welcome all of you to this program today, where we are going to discuss border huts, a very interesting initiative, which is happening in India-Bangladesh border. But in today's program, we are not going to discuss what is happening in India-Bangladesh border. What we are going to discuss today is prospect of that similar initiative in India Myanmar as well as in Myanmar Bangladesh border or Bangladesh Myanmar border.
India Myanmar, I thought.
Yeah. So this is part of a project which we are implementing with support from Foreign Commonwealth and Development Organization of the United Kingdom, formerly known as DFID. And this is a 2-year project, and we have the project, at least during this phase, is going to be there till March next year. And we are very grateful to our partner in Bangladesh, Unofficial, led by Dr. Atiur Rahman and his colleagues Hain Alam, Waliul Islam, and others, for their excellent support, not just to this work, but also to various other activities which we are doing in Bangladesh. So in today's program, we have 4 speakers, and out of them, 2 of them have written 2 briefing papers for us under this project. So the project is about India-Bangladesh border, but we have expanded its horizon a little bit to also see how the situation is in India-Myanmar border and Bangladesh-Myanmar border. What the people at the local level, what they are thinking about an initiative like this. So we have Dr. Najneen Ahmed, from Senior Research Fellow from Bangladesh Institute for Development Studies. We have Mr. Subir Bhaumik, who is Editorial Director of Asian News Media Link, which he has set up formerly with BBC and various other such international media organizations. We have Mr. P. Jawahar, who is the Secretary, Commerce and Industry Department, Government of Mizoram. And we are very pleased to have Ms. Kum Isawanda Lalu, who is Deputy Commissioner of East Khasi Hill District of Meghalaya. So I think we have an excellent set of speakers, as well as diversity. So both Dr. Najneen Ahmed and Mr. Subir Bhaumik, they will be requested to present their paper. Not so much about India-Bangladesh border hut, but what they have written about India-Myanmar and Bangladesh-Myanmar, the prospect, including what local people are thinking about such an initiative. We have a senior government official, Mr. Jawahar, from Government of Mizoram. And we understand that Mizoram government is very keen to replicate this initiative. In fact, they have identified, if I'm not mistaken, 4 locations along the Mizoram-Myanmar border for border huts. And we also have Ms. Lalu from Meghalaya, from Government of Meghalaya. I mean, she is from that area where one border hut is operational, and how it is helping local people, including local women entrepreneurs, in enhancing their livelihood.
You are not explaining.
We will request her to talk about her experience and why it should be replicated in various other locations along the India-Bangladesh border. So that's something which we are going to discuss. So without any further ado, let me once again welcome all of you. And I will request Dr. Najneen Ahmed for her presentation. She has prepared a brief presentation in about 10-12 minutes. So I've started looking at my watch. Over to you, Dr. Ahmed.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Bipulda, for a nice introduction. I would like to request the host to allow me to share my screen. And I have prepared a very brief presentation as Vipulda mentioned. I hope all of you are able to see what is written. I mean, I hope you can see it. Okay, so as Vipulda mentioned that, oh, sorry, can you see the presentation?
No, it is there, but somehow now it is there. But can you increase its size?
Yeah,
Small
I
close?
can. I actually did that, but okay, again,
For
I'm
that,
doing it.
yeah.
No, there is a
Okay.
small wine glass. You have to click on that.
Uh,
Right
I
at the below of your screen.
did the from beginning, usually that we do, and usually it works.
And you can also do F5.
Sorry?
And you can also do function 5. That is also can be done through the keyboard.
Okay. Just only function 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Function and F5.
Yeah, function and F5. Yeah, I did that. I think we should not, if you just can see it
Yeah,
somehow.
we can see it. No, there is no issue there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
carry on.
let me carry on because we don't have time. So what I'm going to try to, because it's a briefing paper, as Vipulda mentioned, so it's about the possibility of border hearts between Bangladesh and Myanmar, whether there is opportunities, challenges. I have to admit that because this was a briefing paper, I think we need further studies. So this briefing paper is based on secondary information and some discussion with people or colleagues about what they think of border hearts between Bangladesh and Myanmar. I have to admit that when I talked with people, even who are in the development practitioners and others, many of them, they do not really have very clear idea about even Bangladesh-India border hearts, what is happening there and how those are performing. So I think we really need to, whatever, because CARTS has done wonderful things and they have good quality publications. I think we need more of reaching out. We need to make these publications available to more people so that they understand why this is so much necessary and why this is so useful to have the border hearts. So I'll go quickly in my second slide. When I was looking at the before I started looking at whatever documents and statistics available, my motivation was from the success of, I would say, the success so far about Bangladesh-India border heart. We all know that border heart gives us ready market and local people. It's not only just trading, it is more than that, where local people can see each other, meet each other and sell their products, sell the products they produce, and those who live very close to the border. So that is the beauty of border heart. It's not just you take products from big cities and sell it there. It's not that. It's actually increases the local product value chain. So that is and interaction between people. So as if we see, we will not talk about the Bangladesh-India border heart, but we know that there are 6 border hearts now, and there is 4 border hearts now, and there is 6 more, for which the location has been selected, and few more has been proposed. And CARTS International has very good publications, several publication, briefing papers, and others on these border hearts, how they are operating, and stuff like that. So if we look at them, so then immediately it comes to our mind that if there is a success between from the border hearts in India, Bangladesh, where it could reduce the informal trade, it could generate livelihood opportunities for the border residents, it could facilitate trade products through hearts. Then when those products which were usually traded informally, now they are traded formally through the border hearts. then immediately the question comes in mind that why can't we have that between Bangladesh and Myanmar? Is that possible? Will that bring, is there a need for that? Will that bring some benefit between not only for trade and also between interaction between the two countries and people? So with that aim, I started looking into the documents, and I've seen from the secondary documents that Bangladesh and Myanmar has border areas of 270 kilometers. There are, some documents say that it's more than 300 kilometers, but so more or less it's 270 to 300 kilometers of that is the border. And then many part is actually divided by the Naf River. So, but not all parts are divided by this river. So some parts are divided by river. Otherwise, it's not very big, but still there is possibility that we can have border huts if that is beneficial for the two countries. And so the thing is, the idea is, just like following India and Bangladesh experience, so border huts between Bangladesh and Myanmar may enable these two countries to reduce informal trade if there is any, and also there are some security concerns, and we can even reduce that maybe through border hut, because it will increase the interaction between people. So let's see that what is the trade situation, because at the end of the day, the prime concern of border hut is to enhance trade between the border, between the people of in the border region, which will actually be contributed or included in the total trade of the country. So if we look at the total trade between Bangladesh and India, from Bangladesh side, our statistics from Bangladesh Bank shows that the latest statistics I could gather when I was writing this briefing paper was 18-19 fiscal year, that means last year. It was $25 million of export, and we imported $90 million worth of product from Myanmar. And if we look at this from Myanmar side, so you can see that Myanmar exported in 18-19 63 million, but if I go back to the earlier slide, it became 90 million import in Bangladesh. So we might be asking question that can the freight cost and tax, can that be so high that the $63 million export could become $90 million import in Bangladesh? I think the first thing we need to notice before we look into the feasibility of border huts and other things, we have to have clear idea of how these statistics have been reported, because this is also from the Commerce Ministry of Myanmar, and that was from Bangladesh Bank. So those are authentic sources. So I think I could not find the, like breakdown of how much was the FOB price and others. So, but anyway, what we see that in terms of Bangladesh share in Myanmar's total export is 0.37. And in terms of Myanmar's import, Bangladesh share is only 0.15%. So it's not that it's a big trading partner, but then the thing is, we are talking about border hut, and then the most important thing is, if we can enhance trade in the border area, then there is justification for having border huts in the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. So if we look at current, it's not border huts, but current trade through border, that is not by ship, not by air. So it's between the border. Then I think I also have difficulty with the names, because in different places, the name, I got these two border names that from different literature. One is Motang, and I think it's Sitwe borders. So these are the two borders that has been reported in different literature, but I would show you that this name is, I think this name is reported in two ways, this Motang border. That's my perception when I looked into the secondary document. So if I look at the trade, these are not, again, this is not border Haat because we don't have any with Myanmar, but this is the border trade that happens, that is 12 million in this border, and this is from the Myanmar side and export, and so these two border, out of that $63 million worth of export, this around $25 million, roughly nearly half of the export from Myanmar currently takes place through the borders. So it's not that if we have border Haats, that will not be a surprise or something if we can have Haats in the borders, because already there is border trade between these two countries, and again this shows the import. So if we because I have less time, if we look at the whether we can have border Haats in the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. This is a picture actually from Bangladesh-India border Haat, but whether we can have this kind of a situation where there will be a border Haat in a secluded area in Bangladesh-Myanmar border, then I think despite that, we have seen the formal trade. Why we think that Bangladesh-Myanmar border trade is possible? That and it will be welcomed because we see there is informal cross-border trade between Bangladesh and India, and because of complicated trade licensing system, that's why many people just don't go. It's not about illegal product, but this is cross-border trade of the informal cross-border trade because of the complicated trade licensing system, especially in the Myanmar side. Then there is lots of informal trade is taking place, and we also hear about lots of illegal trade of yaba and other kinds of drugs between these two countries. Because there is huge informal trade, whenever there is informal trade, that means people try to evade the tax and other system in the formal channel, and in that case border Haat can be a solution, because there you don't really have to pay the taxes, you just sell your product within the Haat area. So because there is informal trade between Bangladesh and Myanmar, there is a possibility that it will be beneficial if we can have the border Haats there. So some estimates, there are some literature, some people have done some work. Some estimates suggest that volume of unofficial trade between Bangladesh and Myanmar could be worth of $300 million. So if you remember, the export from Bangladesh, or it was only $25 million, even import from Myanmar by Bangladesh is $90 million, then the informal trade is much higher than what is happening in terms of the formal trade between these two countries. So that actually creates a possibility that the border Haat could be, where possible, could be a solution. So
4 more minutes. 4 minutes.
Okay. I don't have many slides. So some thoughts. So I think my main logic is we have to see the feasibility of having border Haats and the sites and everything, but the current prevalence of huge informal trade gives some logic to go for and to think about having border Haats between Bangladesh and India. I have already mentioned that Haats International study that elaborates on the different kinds of benefit that we can have from the border Haats, and it can generate employment opportunity of vendors in the transporter, support service, and others. It can help even empower women who can sell their products in the border Haat, who cannot really take their products to different market. It can reduce the informal tax, and it can actually increase the interaction between the people of these two countries, which is very important at the moment, because of as we see the Rohingya problem and others, maybe the bondage between if the bondage is strengthened between the people of these two countries, that can somehow may open a place or a system or I would like to say, an institutional setup where people can discuss about the overall relationship of these two countries. So this Bangladesh-Myanmar border can, all different studies have shown that this can even promote border tourism and facilitate development of the many remote areas, because when you have a border hut, it needs roads and communication and other things, and that actually helps to develop the remote areas where these border huts are placed. So, but I have to admit that it's not so easy between Bangladesh and Myanmar, especially because of the Rohingya thing. But that doesn't mean that we should not start discussion. We should not look for the opportunities, because we have already seen benefits, different benefits of the Bangladesh-India border. So I think this is a right time. There are geographical challenges. There are problems in terms of trust, but as we see huge informal trade, as we see potential to improve trade, and as we see that people-to-people connection can even have some positive influence on the current Rohingya tension, considering all this, I think we can actually start thinking of Bangladesh-Myanmar border huts, the possibility. When the Joint Commission between Bangladesh and Myanmar in December 2011, they had memorandum of understanding and signed a joint memorandum of understanding where they want to promote business between these two countries, though that document did not include the border hut. But under that, there was promise between these two countries that they will work for enhancing the possibilities of trade. I think this can be an opportunity to enhance trade, to improve the relationship between these two countries, and at the same time reduce informal trade and to reduce poverty in the areas where these border huts will be established. I think I stop here. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.
Thank you, Najneen. Before I go to Mr. Bhomik, I just wanted to flag a couple of things. One is that I thank Najneen not because of her presentation, but for the fact that she has written this briefing paper almost without any information. So the information is scarce. She has to struggle to get the right data, to compare, to make them compatible. And perhaps that is why, perhaps that is why we allotted that briefing paper to her, because we knew that she is going to do a very thorough job. Secondly, in her presentation, she has very clearly made a case for why such an initiative can be thought about along the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. Among various other things, that there's a case because this huge informal trade which is happening, border huts can reduce such informal trade, other than people-to-people connectivity, and most importantly, this could be a very good, very effective confidence-building measure on the ground. So we need to, and as Nazin has said, let me underline that point, we need to do more work to make a stronger case for such an initiative on the ground. So with that, let me now request Mr. Subir Bhomik for his presentation. I mean, I guess Subida doesn't have any PowerPoint and he's going to speak. So 10 to 12 minutes, Subida, about your thinking on establishment of border huts in India-Myanmar border.
Yeah, are you getting me all right?
Yes, absolutely all right.
Right. Sister Nazneen, dear boy, made a very good presentation because she is being very optimistic. You know, the situation on the Bangladesh-Myanmar border that I am aware of, and as a field journalist, I've operated there, you know, including with the underground elements. Yeah, it will be very optimistic to imagine that the authorities on both sides, especially the defense people, the army of Myanmar and the army of Bangladesh and the border guard, would actually think in terms of having a border hut there, because they would think this is an additional problem to manage. They have a lot of problems on cards anyway. But anyway, you know, but thanking Nazneen for being so optimistic. Right. Now, on the India-Myanmar border, let me make 4 quick points before I elaborate. Number one, there is a pilot project which is already operational on the Pangshao Pass. That's right up there. If you look at the map on the old Steelwell Road, the road goes out from Jairampur in Arunachal Assam border, and then it goes into Myanmar through a place called Pangshao Pass, which is where this border hut is being located. It's a 3.53 crore project, which is being implemented almost after 6 years after it was taken up. So that gives you an idea of the kind of time that it takes to implement such projects on the India-Myanmar border. And I will elaborate a while from now why that's the case. Um, India-Bangladesh border, except for very brief spells of our history, like, and very specific areas, had this problem of ethnic insurgencies. We had this ethnic insurgency in Chittagong Hill Tracts between 1976 and 1996. And I am primarily a scholar which worked on insurgency and close up, and I know what kind of effect it has on border trade, border movements, the border security regime, and all that stuff. I'm quite familiar with that, both as a field journalist and also on a researcher's, the way researchers come to know. So let me tell you, if there are festering ethnic insurgencies, it makes it very difficult for implementing something like the border hard, because the security forces on both sides of the border are not willing to take chance. A. B. Because of the insurgency, they have much more influence on national policies, on local policies, than would otherwise be the case. If there are no insurgencies in an area, it's the administrators, the politicians who take over. If there are insurgencies in an area, it's the man in uniform who calls the shot. And these men in uniform, and I went to India's best military school, so I know my friends are all generals. I exactly know how they think about such projects. Ye ek aur panga hai. Ye ek aur panga hai. That is the way they think. This is number one, insurgency. Secondly, on the India-Myanmar border, and now also on the Bangladesh-Myanmar border, you have huge contraband trafficking, drugs, weapons, what have you. And therefore, there is a natural tendency to say, border huts, well, you could have an increase rather than a decrease in informal trade, especially informal trade in these kind of contraband items, because people will try to pass it on in the cover of the border trade. That's a very well expressed feeling among the security forces, among the enforcement agencies, that if you have border trade, and if there's a lot of informal trade going on, not in big items and all, but in things like drugs, weapons, it could well be a cover for some of these kind of trafficking to take place. Rightly or wrongly, this is the feeling. And perceptions are very often more important than the reality. So that's number two. And the third point, which actually creates a lot of problem, is India-Myanmar border. Definitely, this is an issue, poor infrastructure. These are borders which have been afflicted by insurgency, where very little development has taken place. Roads, bridges, everything is an issue. This is an issue when India talks of look east, act east, because as you go into Myanmar from the Indian side of the border, and I have done that time and again, illegally, should I say that, meeting insurgent leaders and stuff like that. Yeah, in the course of my job as a correspondent, first with the Telegraph, Anand Bazar Group, and then with Reuters and BBC. Time and again, I've gone and met insurgent leaders. They understand the border better than many people, certainly the officials. But let me tell you something. Poor infrastructure is something they welcome. Poor infrastructure is something which does not help the cause of border trade, border hut, or anything, because you have problems moving goods. Yeah, and let's make it clear. Everything that goes into the border hut is not made on the border. So they have to be brought from somewhere. They're local products, maybe. They're not third country products. They're not China-made stuff. But very often they're made not exactly on the border. They are produced at some distance from the border, and there is an issue of transport involved. And the third thing is, of course, the high transport cost. Even if you have transport, the high cost of transportation. So on the Pangshao Pass, if you notice, it's so much mud and slough that very often you can't move even jeeps there. You need these Chinese motorcycles, which are very slick. Somebody sits behind, pays a lot of money to the guy who drives it. And I've had this experience, fairly recently. So the point I'm trying to make here is that on the India-Myanmar border, these are the four factors that actually impact in a very serious way the establishment of border huts. This is not exactly the case on the India-Bangladesh border, because on the India-Bangladesh border, A, they are more populated. There are populations on either side. If there are populations, there are roads and bridges, and especially with Bengali populations on either side of the border, if there are no infrastructure, these people are going to make a song and dance about it. And the next time politicians want votes, they have to make these people happy by taking roads and bridges out there. Not the case on the India-Myanmar side. Pretty flimsy infrastructure. Yeah. Now, of course, more and more is coming up because in the interest of security operations, armies need, roads, and these things are beginning to happen. But if you have been on the India uh, Bangladesh side of the border and on the India Myanmar side, you can see the difference in anything like an hour. In an hour, you will realize that you are in a different part of India and not exactly on the other side. So, India Myanmar border, the real problem is difficult terrain, high transport cost, difficulties of transportation, lack of infrastructure, and of course, the presence of ethnic insurgencies which are still active. The Naga issue is not yet settled. There are problems. And of course, the Manipur insurgencies and other insurgencies in the area, which is why I think Mizoram being a peaceful state since 1986, the chances of having border huts is much better on the Myanmar Mizoram border. But there again, let me make one more thing clear. I'm an insurgency scholar, and I'll bring this up again with the activities of the Arakan army, which is spreading into the Chin state. Now, Mizoram's border is with the Chin state. Yeah. And I'm not putting up a map or anything up there on the screen because I know this technical glitches. I don't have patience for that. But if you know the border with India and Myanmar, you know that the border of Mizoram is with the Chin state. And the Arakan army activities have spread from the Rakhine state, which is where they were based initially, to the Chin state. And therefore, there is a great problem there because some of the routes which we may think in terms of putting a border huts, actually the routes through which weapons are being trafficked by the Arakan army, it's offloaded on the coast of Bangladesh, lugged up there in Chittagong hill tracks, taken past Mizoram into the Chin state and then on to Rakhine. But Chin state also, the Arakan army has a lot of presence now, and they are disturbing the Indian sponsored Kaladan multimodal project. So, are they going to allow the border trade thing to happen there? Are they going to allow border huts to operate there? Well, Mr. Zoram Thanga, my good friend, who I know since his days in the insurgency and who I interviewed very recently, just before this corona thing happened, I was in Mizoram, and he said, Arakan army insurgencies, Kapu, I'll take care of all that. You don't worry. Ask the government of India to leave it to me because I know everybody who is somebody in the world of insurgency in this area. It's great to have a chief minister like that, who can actually interfere on behalf of the Burmese government to get a Burmese MP out of the clutches of the Arakan army custody. He did it. The thing is, if there is a chance of border huts coming up on the India-Myanmar border, and the Mizoram government has already proposed 4 locations for that: Nanglan, Zote, Vapai, and Sangao. And unlike Nazneen, I don't have a problem with Mizo or Burmese names because I know Burmese and I know a bit of Mizo as well. Yeah. So I don't have to pronounce it the Burmese, the Bengali way. But anyway, jokes apart, back to the point, which is that Mizoram is the only place I think realistically, if the Arakan army is kept under control and if Zoram Thanga is able to put in his right foot there, I think there is a possibility of these 4 and maybe 1 or 2 more border huts actually happening fairly quickly, subject to availability of funds on the Mizoram Myanmar border, on the Manipur Myanmar and the Nagaland Myanmar border, until the insurgencies are resolved, until the insurgencies are resolved, I have grave doubts. And even the Pangshao Pass, where this pilot project was done and where the border heart is actually operational, that area also is not far away from the theater of Naga insurgency, where some of the Kaplan group of the NSCN is particularly active. But having said that, some border trade has begun to happen in the Pangshao Pass. The whole place is open only 2 days a week. Now, that's because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have electricity to the desired level. It's very difficult to take electricity to a place like the Pangshao Pass. You know, also because India has lost some interest in developing the Steelwell Road, the old Second World War vintage Steelwell Road. Pangshao Pass sits there. So India has lost some interest in BCIM, Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar, this regional grouping, economic corridor. India has lost some interest in developing the Steelwell Road as an alternate connective route to Yunnan province of China. And therefore, there is a drop in interest in creating infrastructure in areas like the Pangshao Pass, which is why I want to flag 3 points before I end, people, which is, the development of border hearts in a particular area depends very much on the overall national policy, both security and commercial policy in that part of the world. So here, if India is losing interest in BCIM, it's unlikely that India is going to develop a lot of infrastructure on the Pangshao Pass, which is right on the BCIM, or rather the Steelwell Road, which can be the BCIM economic sort of corridor in future. So that's one. Look at the overall national policies. Yeah, it can't. This border hearts cannot happen in isolation. Look at also the larger regional realities. Yeah, insurgencies. Yeah, contraband trafficking. A lot of arms trafficking. Yeah, recently big arms seizure on the Tripura, Mizoram, Bangladesh border, not far from Myanmar. Yeah, in Fuldung Sheikh, very big arms seizure. Sometime back also in Mizoram. So Mizoram is a state of peace since 1986. But why so many arms seizures have happened in Mizoram? My Assam Rifles friend say that the arms traffickers are using Mizoram as a conduit because the place is peaceful and the security presence is less. So therefore, if you think that this area is peaceful and there will be no further problems, that does not work out that way. So arms trafficking, drug trafficking, very important. Golden Triangle of Myanmar remains the first, sometimes it's first, sometimes it's second, apart from Afghanistan's Golden Crescent. Two of the largest producers of narcotics and psychotropic substance drugs. And therefore, this tends to spill over into Myanmar. You have the Yaba problem, which Nazneen was flagging. I know a bit about that, how local elites are sucked into that, how even Awami League politicians are involved in that. Somebody even gets an MP ticket because he has a lot of drug money in his pocket, or maybe his wife. Nazneen will know who I'm hinting at. So point I'm trying to make here is that when these things happen and the authorities are not able to prevent arms smuggling, they're not able to prevent drug smuggling, they make a case for not having a border heart. ये यहाँ होगा तो प्रॉब्लम होगा. क्या प्रॉब्लम होगा? आप आर्म स्मगलिंग रोक नहीं पाते हो, आप ड्रग स्मगलिंग रोक नहीं पाते हो. What is the problem with border hearts? Yes, some few local people are going to exchange some products, but at the end of the day, that is how it actually happens. That the bureaucracy, that the security bureaucracy particularly, is very influential in any disturbed regions of the world. The CHT in Bangladesh, all these troubled areas in Myanmar, Northeast India and Kashmir in India. The man in uniform wields an extra influence in such areas, and therefore, they don't look at trade as something very friendly. They think trade, ye chalta hai. It's always illegal. That's the look. But if you go to, people, I'll just finish. If you just go and see the hypocrisy of it, you go to More in Manipur, which is right on the border, and you will find that more Assam Rifle trucks are waiting there to pack up a lot of these contraband which has come from across the border, Chinese products actually. But when it comes to policy boardrooms, they are the people who are going to say, no, you can't have a border heart. There's a security problem here. So these are the problems which exist. And finally, I'll end by saying that does not mean you shouldn't be optimistic. We should all be as optimistic as Nazneen has been. And I think Mizoram definitely has a strong case for border hearts with the Myanmar border. Later on, as peace extends to other parts of Northeast, maybe we can have more of them all across the 1643 square kilometer long India-Myanmar border. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhowmik. Thank you for highlighting that to begin with, Mizoram we should look at as the place where we can think about India-Myanmar border huts. We already have a memorandum of understanding between the government of India and the government of Myanmar for the establishment of border huts. Now, we also need to see that how this pilot project is coming up, how much time it is going to take. So we need to visit those locations and see how we can work closely with government of Mizoram in particular for initiating this initiative. Now, of course, we are going to talk about or we are going to hear about views from the government of Mizoram and why Mizoram is ideally located for the establishment of border huts in India-Myanmar border, and what Mizoram government, what are the steps that Mizoram government is taking for that to happen as soon as possible. But before that, let us first hear from Mrs. Sawanda, who is from East Khasi Hills, from Meghalaya, and that is where one of the border huts is operational. So if she can tell us about her experience of how local people are thinking about or expressing themselves, what is their take on this initiative? So over to you in about 8 to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bipul, for giving me this opportunity. It's a pleasure to share this forum with all of you in a very interesting topic. And particularly, I'd like to thank Mr. Sumanto for calling me incessantly and emailing me since last week. If I may mention, I was recently transferred to East Khasi Hills district, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but nonetheless, I thought it would be very useful, it would be interesting, and it would be beneficial for me also to hear from experts who are dealing with border issues, and particularly border huts, which include the CUBS International and the prominent journalists and academicians. So thank you so much to all the speakers as well, Dr. Nazneen for her briefing paper and for setting the tone for this discussion, Mr. Subir Bhowmik for his insightful comments based on his wide journalistic experience. In fact, when I was doing my preparation, I remember reading Mr. Subir's book, Troubled Periphery, which was a staple, which I was, which also helped me a lot during those times. So thank you so much. I have worked just as a brief introduction, I'm an IAS officer of the 2013 batch in the Assam Meghalaya cadre, and I was posted earlier in Amrem subdivision, West Jantia Hills, which shares a border with Bangladesh. Subsequent to that, in 2017, I was posted as Deputy Commissioner in Southwest Khasi Hills, which shares a border with Bangladesh. And this is my second posting as DC in East Khasi Hills, Shillong being the capital, which also shares a border with Bangladesh. So I based on this, I've had a fair bit of experience in working in the border areas. I've seen, the way of life of the people at the border areas. So just to share a bit about my experience regarding the border huts, and particularly from the administrative point of view, and what I've observed on how they have benefited the people in the border areas. So Meghalaya, yes, it shares a border of 443 kilometers with Bangladesh. These border areas cut across 6 districts, 2 in the Garo Hills of Meghalaya, 2 in the Khasi Hills of Meghalaya, and 2 in the Jantia Hills of Meghalaya. So prior to 1947, a lot of studies have indicated, a lot of literature as well as people's recollections that trade and commerce used to really flourish in these areas. These were places that formed the meeting point between the hills and the plains, areas which are at the cusp of two vastly different areas, both socially, culturally, and topographically, but which were closely related and which were mutually dependent. So the tribes in the hills cultivated fruits, spices, they grew bamboo grass, broomsticks, while the plain areas, had poultry, fish, diverse products such as tools and implements, garments, even gold. So there was a lot of free movement of goods and of people as well in these traditional Haats. But of course, after partition and after the drawing of the Ratcliffe line, the areas became separate entities and there were restrictions on movement. For this also, I'd like to state that I've read this briefing paper which Mrs. Sumanto shared with me, written by
I'm on a Zoom meeting.
useful and insightful paper as well. So what we have noticed, what statistics and what commentators have observed, is that the economic status of the people living along the border of Meghalaya has shown a decline in the 50-60 years since partition. These areas are places with difficult terrain, with like Mr. Bhomik was saying, high transport costs. So the natural trade route for people was cut off with partition, stifling this most natural trade route, which has been a lifeline for the people. The relationship with the people on the other side was also aborted suddenly. And suddenly now you have an administrative and a political headquarter, which is a city you've never seen, which is 100 to 200 kilometers away, more than 5 to 6 journeys on foot. Even now with the bad roads, it is a long day's reach. Progressively, with the institution of a number of schemes through various ministries and departments, as along the relative improvement and in road and telecom connectivity, particularly in the past 10-15 years, the situation has improved to a great extent. So as mentioned, and as the briefing paper also shows, that through the Department of Border Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, the Border Area Development Scheme in particular has been instrumental in meeting the development needs of people in these areas, who have in a sense been cut off from their traditional way of life, and from the trade routes and practices which they have been following for hundreds of years. So a key initiative in this regard was the decision to reopen the two traditional border Haats, to set up the concept of border Haats in the state, which was piloted in the state of Meghalaya, in Kalaichar in West Garo Hills, and after that in Balat in East Khasi Hills, to revive an age-old practice, to regulate and streamline the movement and exchange of goods and commodities between the two countries, and to simplify this whole process of bilateral trade by adopting and reviving a traditional practice without involving too much paperwork and hurdles and modern day requirement for customs and visa and passport and so on and so forth, while keeping in mind also aspects of international security, of law and order, and mutually beneficial trade relationships to uplift the economic condition of the people of the area. So if we read the memorandum of understanding which was drawn between the government of the Republic of India and the government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, it is very extensive and lays out in great detail the objective, the modalities, and the way forward for these border Haats. So in the border Haats and in the border areas which I've worked in recent years, also border trade has been happening for minerals like coal, like limestone, like boulder stone. We have the land customs station in Dauki in West Jante Hills. We have the integrated check post by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So there are corporations, there are companies like Lafarge in Shella and East Khasi Hills, which are currently operating, which are contributing a lot to the economy of the area as well. So these border Haats are markets which have a clear modus operandi. They are constructed to allow for smooth and easy movement of people and commodities. They have a clear layout, a design. They are regulated by timings. They are manned by BSF, by security personnel, and they also have your institutional mechanism through your Haat management committee, which constitutes of representatives from police, from customs, etc. For taking care of the implementation regional aspects, and they also incorporate this, the participatory approach in which, local authorities, local custodians, it could be the local chieftain, the landowner, they could also be members of these Haat management committees, which will, maintain a list of all the vendors, select the vendors, authorize the entry and exit, and enforce, basically to run the Haats and to enforce health measures and other such things which are required in close liaison with the local people. This is a gist of what the border Haats have been doing. And right now, between India and Bangladesh, in the 2 border Haats in existence and the 4 border Haats which were approved in 2014-15, we have a number of approved commodities such as vegetables, food items, fruits and spices, minor forest produce like bamboo grass, timber, products of cottage industries like gamchai or lungi, small agricultural household implements, and even garments, melamine products, processed food items, fruit juice, toiletries, cosmetics coming in and out. So it meets the needs of the people of those areas. It particularly it provides it makes up for the gap. For instance, these areas in Meghalaya are very far from any industrial or production areas, so they rely to a great extent on these Haats for a lot of these items of daily use, such as cookeries and plastic products and so on and so forth, which are particularly important for use for domestic purposes by women in these areas. So what has been happening is that with the successful implementation of these other 2 border Haats, we saw that the government of India decided to replicate it in other areas such as Tripura, such as Assam. In Meghalaya, 4 border Haats are in the advanced stage of completion in Bholaganj, East Khasi Hills, Nolikata, Southwest Khasi Hills, Rinku in East Khasi Hills, and Shibari in South Garo Hills. These border Haats were actually supposed to have been inaugurated by our Honorable Prime Minister earlier this year, but because of the whole COVID pandemic, it had to be put on hold. In 2019, the second meeting of the Bangladesh-India Joint Committee on Border Haats was held in Sylhet, and 2 new border Haats at Kilapara, Dalu, West Garo Hills, and Huroi, East Jante Hills district was prepared. So the process of construction, the tendering, the monitoring of the work is carried out in the state of Meghalaya by the Commerce and Industries Department. So as of now, the number of border Haats which have been kept in the state on priority number to 16, including the present ones. And the exports of agricultural produce through the 2 border Haats in the year 2016-17 amounted to almost 2.8 crores, and in 17-18 almost 2.9 crores. So as we can see, the benefits are wide-ranging. Dr. Nazneen has set out in her briefing note about the overall objective of the border Haats. The socio-economic benefits for the people is manifold. It cannot be overstated. And now the thought process is, how do we improve, how do we augment, how do we further streamline these border Haats? The first thing is perhaps we can increase the range of approved products, which has to be approved by the ministry, because as of now, time and again has been mentioned, even in this webinar, that unregulated markets are rife. There are plenty of black markets and illegal trade going on. So if systems are put in place where the trade of cattle, say, for which cattle smuggling is going on to a large extent, is regularized, it would perhaps do away with illegal activities. At the same time, it would improve the revenues, the economic status of the people in these areas. Apart from that, the potential of border areas for cultural and tourism exchange as well. In any commingling of people in any border area, it's always a melting pot of cultures, of language, of cuisines, and so there's a tremendous scope for cultural exchanges, for tourism, for education interactions. in the places which I have worked in Dauki, in Balat, in Ranikor, and in Shela Bholaganj as well, we see that the kind of people you meet. There's a commingling of people of different languages and different cultures. It's a melting pot, and it's truly heartening to see that people speak multiple languages. They are fluent. They are quick to pick up things because of trade having existed for hundreds of years. We can say that they are conversant and they are sharp. So all these things provide huge potential, and it can also attract scholars and niche visitors who are interested in history and heritage. For example, when I was in Balat in southwest Khasi Hills, when I was in Juai, there is a very popular route which the earlier king of Jantiapur, whose capital is located in present-day Bangladesh, used to walk from. And along the way, there are these monoliths, there are these beautiful temples, and it goes all the way to Mymensingh, if I'm not wrong. So exploring the potential of niche tourism, these kinds of activities to supplement what is already happening in the border Haats, exploring the potential of increasing people-to-people contact will further boost the economy of these regions. It will facilitate economic development, and it will also improve bilateral relations. Another example is when I was in Balat in 2018. His Excellency, the President of Bangladesh, also visited. He during his experience in the Bangladesh Liberation War, he had in fact lived in those areas. He had worked in those areas, so he wanted to visit a house in which he had stayed for a significant amount of time, and we were able to locate that house. So making that as a a heritage center, and furthering this idea which I talked about, I think has tremendous potential and scope. Um, Secondly, I had already talked about unregulated markets. Apart from the existing border Haats, there are still a lot of traditional markets which happen between India and Bangladesh, but they are not regulated, they are not recognized. But I mean, we have to admit that they exist, and it's almost as if it's an informal sort of arrangement where even your BSF personnel, he agrees to it, he stands there, he gives the people 2 hours to quickly do the exchange and then finish it up. So we have recommended to the ministry and to the department that if we can regularize these markets, the sooner the better. Especially in this pandemic period, people have been very, very badly hit by the fact that these relationships have been closed because of the border has been stringently manned. There are unfenced areas in which the river forms the border, so people still use boats to take your goods, your jackfruit and other products to the other side, and sometimes the exchange is in rupees, sometimes it's in taka. So we have to find a way in which we regulate these markets so that we can better monitor these areas. It would provide for better security to all concerned. It would decrease also your instance of cattle smuggling, your smuggling in narcotics and other products. And as Mr. Bhomik had very rightly mentioned, we also need to be alive to the potential or the fear or the threat of insurgency, because economic distress or protracted underdevelopment in any area will lead to discontent and strife and a desire to take up arms. So we have to try to enhance the trade relationship between the two countries. The potential is there. The youth of these areas need to be pulled in. We have a number of schemes for skill development, particularly through the Border Area Development Program, in which we want to improve the skilling. We want to skill local people in food processing, in adventure tourism, in other sectors, which will really stop the migration or the exodus of youth from these border areas to the capital city, to Shillong, where they pursued education, and then they are satisfied with the number of jobs in government service and other such. Whereas the potential in the border areas, especially in agro and allied activities, in fisheries, in tourism, is still very much unutilized. And lastly, the paper which I'd read, which Mrs. Sumanta had sent, also talks about how we need to rethink these border Haats in COVID times. COVID has been an eye-opener for all of us in so many ways. And yes, we need to reopen them, but we also need to be very clear and comprehensive about protocols. We have to realize that health is a priority. When in my time in Southwest Khasi Hills with the whole pandemic, we realized a lot of people were it's a disease. COVID is a disease which has come from a faraway country and has yet penetrated right to the rural areas. And we are at, these people in the border areas are the most vulnerable. If we don't have enough health facilities, CHCs, PHCs, how do they manage in such times? So keeping in mind, yes, trade and economic upliftment, we have to realize that there has to be all-round development, schools, health facilities, government benefits through ICDS, through other development schemes. NREGA have to be really improved and have to be closely monitored by the administration and by the government at large. And of course, for COVID, we need to have a very clear protocol which will satisfy the people as well in the border areas, and which will prevent a risk of any outbreak or spread in those areas, which will be catastrophic for them. So these are just a few thoughts from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lalup, for your thoughts, for your recommendations. As you know, that we have been working on this subject for quite some time now, and we'll be looking forward to work more with you to take forward some of these recommendations, if not all. Also, that we have written a briefing paper. My colleagues, they have written it on border heart in a post-COVID era. I mean, in the light of the COVID-19. So we're going to organize a webinar on that subject as well, including, the underlining the importance of cultural exchanges or the cultural aspects of this initiatives. So we have heard from Nazneen, we have heard from Mr. Bhomik, we have heard from you. Now, taking all this together, particularly the point that Mr. Bhomik has made on why he thinks that Mizoram is the right place for initiating border heart between India and Myanmar. So we have this very senior official from the Mizoram government, Secretary Commerce and Industry Department, Mr. Jawahar. So we would like to hear from you, Mr. Jawahar, about your thoughts, and also what is the current thinking in the Mizo government, and how you are taking forward this call for opening up of border huts in between India and Myanmar border, or Mizoram Myanmar border with New Delhi. So over to you. You have about 10-12 minutes.
Good evening, all. I think I should thank all the previous speakers in today's webinar, because I, as a person who has just completed 1 year in Mizoram, because I belong to the Union Territory cadre, which I keep moving every 3 years like a nomad. So this webinar, I think, was quite a learning experience for me, and especially from the Meghalaya, what is Meghalaya is doing on the border front. I would like to just draw the attention to the ongoing deliberations between Government of India and the Government of Myanmar this week, more especially because the Joint Trade Committee meeting between the two ministers, Minister of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, as well as from Government of Myanmar, is going to take place very shortly, and joint secretary level meetings are scheduled. I think tomorrow. Tomorrow is the meeting, and we will also be attending that as a participant from the state. In that meeting, they are going to finalize the mode of operation for running the border huts between India and Myanmar. And we also went through the draft, and there are some interesting things. And there are some issues also which are flagged by Myanmar, and that nitty-gritties is being sorted out through various video conferences between the states and the center, and I think between the center through the Indian Embassy in Myanmar. So I hope in the JTC meeting the MOU will be signed, and it will set the rule for the game of operating a border hut between India and Myanmar on both sides. And I think the border hut design is one critical thing which will be finalized in the mode of operation document, because that will enable us to prepare a DPR based on the design approved in the mode of operation document. And we have already engaged a consultant we are going to sign a agreement with the consultant. Our consultant is NBCC for preparing the DPR for border Haats across Myanmar as well as with Bangladesh. As you know, Mizoram shares something like approximately 400 kilometers with Myanmar, 404 kilometers to be precise. And with Bangladesh, it shares 318-kilometer border. And there are 4 identified border Haats with Myanmar, and 3 fall in Champhai district and 1 fall in Siaha district of Mizoram. And the 3 in Champhai district are Nalan, Zote, and Waphai. And in Siaha district, it is Pankwa uh, with Myanmar. This is with Myanmar. And in case of Bangladesh, there are 4 which are identified: Tuipibari, Silsuri, Marpara, and Nansuri. These are the 4 border Haats which will be established along with Bangladesh. But to be frank, I think the proposal with Myanmar is happening in a better pace. Probably because of government of India's push also to show quick progress on that front. And we are also in the process of preparing a DPR for constructing bridges across the river, Tiao River with Champhai, and River Kolodine in Siaha district, where the other border Haat is going to come up, the Pankwa. So there will be 4 bridges and access roads and things like that. That DPR is being prepared by our PWD department here. And we hope things will fall in place very soon after the signing of this memorandum of operation between the 2 countries. And as far as the prioritization of the border Haat is concerned, Mizoram has preferred to first establish the border Haat in Nalan in Champhai district. Also because of its proximity with the Zokotar land custom station. Probably we thought there will be some sort of a synergy between the informal trade, which will happen in through the border Haats, and with the formal trade, which is going to happen in the Zokotar land custom station. Apart from the land custom station in Zokotar, Mizoram is also going to get another land custom station in Zorinpui, which is part of the Kaladan multimodal transport project between India and Myanmar. And the third one is an integrated check post, which is going to come up in a place called Karpichua. I think that is across the river Tegamuk, bordering Bangladesh. And Land Port Authority of India is going to develop that integrated check post, and I think they are ready with a DPR for that. Also, very soon the chairman of the Land Port Authority of India is going to visit Mizoram, provided we give the quarantine clearance for them. That is the background which I would like to set. And regarding the opportunities and the challenges, I think the opportunities, I hope our opportunities is not going to be much different from what my fellow officer from Meghalaya had briefed all of us, and that was beautifully done. I think almost the same, and of course the cultural and the historical lives of people of Mizoram and the people of Myanmar in the Chin state are intertwined strongly, and the whatever things is applicable to Meghalaya will have the same for Mizoram as well. And apart from that, the opportunities which are well explained already, I would like to also talk about the challenges to highlight that. I'm not sure how the border Haat will be a panacea for all the problems associated with sort of gun running or drug smuggling or even contraband smuggling, etc. Unless the issue of porous boundary is addressed, that may not be a panacea. But of course, border Haat is going to be a positive move, especially because people can actually do a fearless exchange of goods in the border Haat. Also, I think there is going to be a quantum restriction for a trade in the border Haat, because I think there will be a cap like $50 or $100 or $200. Still, it is not fixed yet, but it is being deliberated. If at all it is something like even $200, I don't know how far in the current circumstances, how far $200 is quite sufficient enough to promote the kind of a trade in a very small or informal way. That right quantum will always be managing. That right quantum of trade is an issue for the Border Haat Management Committee, and we need to see how how it is done, especially in I think the existing border Haats in Meghalaya and the Pangshao Pass in Arunachal Pradesh. And I think only those who are actually closely involved in on that border Haat Management Committee can explain the practical difficulties in running a facility like that for the benefit of both the population. And of course, Mizoram is going to gain immensely in that through the border Haat, because Mizoram does require a lot of items from Myanmar because of the typical, bottleneck facing road connectivity for the supply of essential commodities through the mainland India into the northeastern state. That is so typical, and I think that gap is by and large filled by the informal trade which is happening across the various forest boundaries in Mizoram. So that thing, though informal, it also, I mean, people can also smuggle other things apart from the basic essential items, which I'm sure our security agencies are addressing then and there when they come across that. And in the broader picture, I think even yesterday there was a discussion with the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industries, regarding this mode of operation. And one of the interesting ideas which is floated is to develop a sort of a processing industry on the Indian side for processing the surplus agriculture product commodities which is flowing from the Myanmar side. I think Myanmar has got excellent, supply of certain crops like beans and pulses and fruits and vegetables. I think they have got excellent, uh, marketable surplus, which can be used for processing in a place like Mizoram. And then, for even for the local populace here, that is going to be of a great help. That is from my side on the opportunities as well as the challenges. Unfortunately, there is a accident which has happened, which pertains to my department. There was a big market which has collapsed in Aizawl. So I think I have to rush after this without, taking the feedback of, I cannot participate in further discussions. Unfortunately, I have to make a number of calls to address that issue. So with these remarks, I'd like to wind up. And I thank Kutch and Mr. Arnab for the opportunity. And I also would like to thank all the previous speakers, because I really learned something from all the three of them. And from Kutch, the briefing paper was amazing. And a special thanks to Ms. Nazreen and Mr. Baumik for coming out with that. And thanks a lot. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Jawahar. Before you leave, thank you very much for telling us about all these initiatives. And as you know, we have been working on this subject, and we'll be more than happy to work with you, with the Mizoram government, with you and your department in making them operational as soon as possible. So we still have about 15 minutes for this program. Now we have heard from all four speakers. There are opportunities, there are challenges, but one common thing, if I may put it that way, is how do we take this knowledge, whatever we are learning, forward to respective capitals? So we have two very senior officials who have joined us in today's program. Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakraborty, who was former ambassador of India to Bangladesh, and Mr. Manoj Kumar Roy, who was additional secretary in the Department of Commerce, Government of Bangladesh. And in fact, he was the person instrumental behind the establishment of border huts in their initial stages. So I would first request Ambassador Chakraborty for his thoughts and his suggestions, in fact, that primarily, broadly speaking, there are three agencies with whom we have to work: Foreign Ministry, Commerce Ministry, and Home Ministry, which looks after the security, internal security in particular. So, how do we take forward this knowledge to these three ministries? Ambassador Chakravarti, if we can hear your thoughts briefly in about 5 6 minutes on this point, then I'll come to Mr. Roy. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bipul. Firstly, my congratulations to all the speakers for their wonderful presentations. I am feeling nostalgic because when I was High Commissioner in Bangladesh, I started the ball rolling on the border Haats. And I still remember that in one meeting, somebody asked me, what is the conception of a border Haat? So from the top of my head, I drew a line on the blackboard and then say, look, we have a fenced area, half on this side, half on this side, or whatever, and we have some controlled entry points, etc. And people come in with passes, etc. This was entirely something I conceived on the spot. And then, of course, a lot of work has been done since then. And at that time, and then we signed the Memorandum of Understanding. I am happy that this has now extended to, I don't know how many now we have with Bangladesh. Perhaps I heard a figure of 16 or something, and which is wonderful, absolutely.
We have
Basically,
four
hmm,
which are operational, six more
hmm,
are about to come.
right, so
They are
10
expected to
total.
become operational very soon.
Good.
Then there are 16 more, which the locations
Oh,
have been
so
identified.
10 plus 16, so that
Yeah.
makes it 26. Good. The more the better, because these things are really people centric in the sense that traditionally people have been trading across these points. I mean, before the Radcliffe line kicked in and sort of sundered all these things. So basically, as you know, that today the concept is between India and Bangladesh that we will restore all the connectivities, and this is a trade connectivity between India and Bangladesh that existed before the Radcliffe line came in. So I think conceptually that is how this kind of connectivities are being re-established, whether it is rail, road, custom stations, etc., and things. Customs, of course, is a post-independent phenomena, and so I think what is going to happen is that I think the border management department of the Home Ministry is, of course, now fully, which was created soon after that when I was High Commissioner, and it now has enough experience to deal with these things and to deal with and to decide with the. But I think the role of the local. Administration, the state government is very, very important. I remember traveling to all the state capitals which border Bangladesh to talk to them about these things. And this kind of coordination is very necessary. Unfortunately, we do not have a foreign policy coordinating mechanism with between the central government and the states, apart from personal initiatives and others, and of course at the central government level coordination.
We
So
do
I
have,
think,
sir, state cell, but I don't know how it is functioning.
well, I don't know. We have in MEA now a joint secretary states who's supposed to coordinate these things with. But this has happened after 70 years of independence. I mean, there are 17 Indian states which share borders with foreign countries, and so I think their inputs are very vital for these kind of projects. Anyway, the point is that I don't think there is now any dearth of knowledge on this. At that time, there was, for example. I'll give you another example. For example, when we were trying to run the first train between Dhaka and Delhi and Delhi and Dhaka. So my submission was at that time that let us do immigration and customs on board the train. Now that was not acceptable to the customs and immigration people at that time. So we had that very, very sort of convoluted method that every passenger had to get off at the border station first border station, then go through customs and all that, and reboard the train to proceed. I mean, these are, of course, I believe now those systems have been improved, and I don't know whether, I was told that now they are even thinking of having customs immigration at at the starting point. That is, both customs and immigration of both countries will work jointly to do it. I hope these things are being implemented, because these are the facilitators that will help in connectivity. So I'm confident that this will go ahead unless something major happens. And border hearts have is now a well-established concept and does not need to be reinvented every time. So, but Subir's point is very relevant about, you need peace, stability, and on the border for these kind of things. I am not sure whether we should buy the security argument all the time that border hearts will add to their problems. I don't think so. I don't
On the
think it will add.
contrary,
On the contrary, it will create goodwill among the people on the border, and security might even benefit from it by gathering intelligence, for example. And so my view is that
absolutely, absolutely.
my view is that informal trade in any case is going on and will go on till such time we are able to set in connectivities and infrastructure and everything, so that people don't see any advantage in informal trade anymore, and they shift to the formal channels. That's the overall
Yes,
concept, and that is what
that
had impelled us to do all these things. Thank you very much.
that's that. Thank you, sir. And that's exactly what we have witnessed since we have been visiting these areas for the last 5 years. And we are also capturing our fieldwork notes through briefing papers, through discussion papers. Now, we have made a number of suggestions, and we have made note of them. And we need to see that how we take forward those suggestions. Definitely, you have to engage more with the Department of Border Management in the Home Ministry. Definitely, you have to work more with the state governments. The concept of para diplomacy is very nascent in our country, in fact, in the world. Now, we need to see how we need to generate interest among the state governments on diplomacy, because they are also, particularly the bordering states, they are very much part of the overall ecosystem of our diplomatic initiatives. So with that, let me now request Mr. Manoj Kumar Roy about your thoughts and how we take forward this initiative to the establishment in Bangladesh, particularly the Foreign Ministry, Commerce Ministry, and the Internal Security Home Ministry. Mr. Roy, briefly.
Thank you very much, Bipulda, actually for giving me scope to say some words on the border hut. Basically, actually, I vision border hut as the growth centers, future growth centers of this region. If we can actually build an integrated region like, say, EU. So, from the very initial point, actually, it is the connectivity. Actually, if we go back 100 years, that the whole region was under the same having movement of all actually factors, capitals, man, etc., freely moving. But later on, the states boundaries are there, then these were halt. Now, in the name of connectivity, again, we are trying to go back to that integrated economy, and the growth and the border huts, I think, are then and actually basically a tool to achieve that integrated economy. Actually, as actually, I think we have passed almost 10 years in establishing the border huts, and some border huts already started and they are working or functioning actually good. I've also visited some of them. There are some actually issues on the product lists, security arrangements, etc. But these are moving. And the issue is that there are ministries and agencies, the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Homes, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the local administration. These four actually bodies are actually linked with these issues. And next, and then actually the customs, that is the finance ministries. So customs look it in a different way than what the other ministries actually look. They always consider it that this is a loss of actually revenues, etc. But Minister of Commerce in both the countries actually think it that this will actually generate more income activities for the dwellers along the borders. And actually, the border huts, the areas where it is being selected, there are areas where the people are actually lacking in for their actually consumable actually or commodities. So if the other side can actually deliver the commodities they require, and they are actually it actually serves purpose for the both sides, then it will create more economic activity in the sides, and that create actually employment also. So in the last report, actually, what I suggested that whether some skills development actually can be arranged along the or near the border or surrounding the border hut areas, and also some microcredit, if some access to finance can be provided, and the skills for the new product developments that have the demand actually on across the borders. That will give actually a impetus to the local people in support of this border huts. And it is true that also during the first establishment of the border, it was an actually objective, the man to man, actually people to people connectivity was important. Though it is not written in the uh, legal instruments uh, anywhere, but till now it is an objective of border huts that the people to people contact, those who are living along the borders, can actually develop. This will give at large, this will give a better understanding and better relation to the both the governments in the two countries. So, in spite that there are some areas actually to more develop, if we can actually convince the both the governments to extend the product list and allow a more number of actually vendor and vendors. And from India's part, the 5 kilometer actually limitation, that's actually creating hassle for the development, the business within the actually border huts. And the fact is that the population on the Indian side is not so dense as in the Bangladesh side. So there are actually fewer bandits from Indian side also.
Thank you.
So I think that if the governments and the our recommendations are taken care of by the governments, there are so many things suggested that will actually provide actually a development to the border huts. And I think if we can actually extend it to Myanmar, that will also do some good, because due to the Rohingya issues, Bangladesh and actually Myanmar, these two governments are a little bit apart. So even through this small initiative, little initiative of border huts, if this Bangladesh government and Myanmar government can come nearer, that will also solve some issues at broader aspects. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Manojda. So we have heard from all of you. I mean, very good suggestions for taking forward this initiative. So we have made a note of those suggestions, and we'll do our best in taking forward those suggestions to the respective governments or government authorities in Bangladesh and in India. Also, we'll see that how perhaps we can reach out to the Myanmar government through the Myanmar embassy in Delhi for taking forward these recommendations. So we hope that we're going to see the establishment of at least a few border huts in India-Myanmar border to begin with. Bangladesh-Myanmar border is much more challenging, as we have heard. but we are optimistic in the sense that we hope
I
that.
want to request one thing, because the one thing,
Hmm.
actually, as Bangladesh and Myanmar, these two governments, the issue of Rohingya, actually are a little bit apart. So, if India can take initiative even on this issue of border huts, establishing border huts along the borders, then I think it can serve a greater, broader perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we have come to an end to this to today's program. We are more or less right on time. So let me once again thank all of you, particularly the speakers and writers of these papers. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, our next webinar on border huts, India-Bangladesh border huts, will be held on 29th of October, which is another Thursday. So we're trying to do them on Thursdays. Let us see that how best we can achieve incremental progress for better outcomes from this initiative. So thank you, and let me now leave this meeting. Thank you. Take care. Stay well. So I guess Najreen has already reached a border point in India, Bangladesh, Myanmar border.
Virtually,
Virtually.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Najreen. Thank you,
Thank
Subirda.
you. Bye. Thank you,
Thank you,
Shubhida.
everybody.
Thank you, Vipulda. Bye.
Thank you, Bipulda.
Bye.
Thank you, Subudda.
Thank you, Arnab bhai. Bye.
Thank you, Nancy.
Cats and
Thank you all. Thank you, Didi. Thank you all.
Nah.
Thank you.